You know this man. The guy who charged up San Juan Hill, the trustbuster who stared down corporate giants, the face carved into a mountain, the very symbol of American strength. He's the man who famously declared that a single bullet couldn't stop a bull moose. But what if I told you that this unstoppable force of nature was born so frail, doctors didn't think he'd survive? That he was a small, timid boy who spent his nights gasping for air, a prisoner in his own body? This is the story of how a boy at war with his own body forged himself into one of the most vigorous presidents in American history. Long before the legend, there was just TD. Born into a wealthy New York family in 1858, Theodore Roosevelt started out as a fragile, delicate child. His adoring parents lived in constant fear that he wouldn't even make it to his 4th birthday. His life was ruled by a vicious, chronic asthma that would strike without warning, usually in the dead of night. Imagine being a little kid, and every night feels like you're drowning, unable to take a full breath for hours on end. Young TD would be propped up in bed, wheezing, as his father, Theodore Sr., paced the floor with him, sometimes carrying him for hours just to bring the boy a little relief. His father would even take him on frantic carriage rides on cold nights, hoping the sharp air would shock his tiny lungs into working. And the so-called cures of the 19th century? They were just as terrifying. Doctors prescribed everything from black coffee to smoking cigars. They even tried painful electric shock treatments, thinking they could jolt his body back to health. This constant weakness took a psychological toll. He was small, nearsighted, and timid, which made him an easy target for bullies and deepened his sense of helplessness. After one particularly humiliating beating from 2 other boys, he felt a crushing sense of shame. He was a prisoner in his own body, and his only escape was into books about heroic adventurers, men who were everything he wasn't. But inside that weak frame was a brilliant and curious mind. He fell in love with the natural world, starting his own Roosevelt Museum of Natural History from specimens he collected. He was painfully aware of the world he couldn't join, but something was starting to smolder inside him, a burning desire for more. The turning point came when he was a boy, somewhere between 10 and 12 years old. His mind was sharp, but his body was failing him. His father, the man he idolized more than anyone, sat him down for a talk that would completely alter the course of his life. Theodore Sr., a powerful and respected man himself, saw the fire locked away inside his son. He laid out the brutal truth. Theodore, you have the mind, but you have not the body. Without the help of the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should. You must make your body. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a challenge. His father was telling him that his weakness was no longer an excuse. It was a choice. Surrender to it or declare war on it. For young TD, the answer was clear. He looked at his father and said, "I will make my body." And in that moment, the prisoner decided to break out of his cell. His father immediately had a gym built on their 2nd-story piazza and hired a former prize fighter to teach his son how to box. What followed was pure, monotonous agony. The boy who could barely breathe started a disciplined routine of gymnastics, weightlifting, and boxing. He spent hours on parallel bars and lifting weights, painstakingly building muscle on his frail frame. It was agonizing work. He wasn't a natural athlete. In fact, he was clumsy and got discouraged often. But for the first time, he had a clear target for his incredible willpower. Every push-up, every sparring match, was an act of defiance against his own body. He was done being a victim. He was finally fighting back. This was the birth of his lifelong philosophy, the strenuous life. As a young man, Roosevelt's hard work was paying off. He arrived at Harvard stronger and far more confident. While he was never a star athlete, he made his mark in boxing and rowing simply by being the most determined man in the room. Life seemed to be on an upward trajectory. He graduated from Harvard, married his first love, Alice Hathaway Lee, and won a seat in the New York State Assembly. He was a political rising star, buzzing with ambition. The frail boy was long gone, replaced by a man of action. And just as he'd built this new life, it all came crashing down. February 14th, 1884. It's a date that would haunt him forever. Just 2 days after his wife Alice gave birth to their first child, she died from a sudden, undiagnosed kidney failure. In a gut-wrenching twist of fate, In the same house, on the very same day, his mother died of typhoid fever. Roosevelt was only 25. He was destroyed. In his diary, he drew a thick black X and wrote just one sentence: "The light has gone out of my life." To escape the grief that was suffocating him, he fled. Leaving his newborn daughter with his sister, he ran to the one place that seemed as wild and unforgiving as his own heart: the Dakota Badlands. He'd invested in a cattle ranch there a year earlier, but now it became his sanctuary and his exile. He threw himself into the brutal, back-breaking work of a cowboy. This New York aristocrat learned to ride for days, sleep on the cold ground, chase down cattle thieves, and survive the punishing frontier weather. The local cowboys first saw him as a joke, a scrawny, four-eyed rich kid playing dress-up. But they quickly learned he was all grit. He never backed down from the hardest jobs and earned their respect through sheer, stubborn will. The Badlands became his crucible. The raw physical hardship began to mend his spirit. Out there in that vast, harsh landscape, he grieved, he healed, and he was reborn. The man who emerged from the West wasn't just strong. He was tough and resilient in a way he had never been before. As he would later say, "I have always said I would not have been president had it not been for my experience in North Dakota." Roosevelt proves that our limits don't have to be our destiny. He showed that strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you build, one painful step at a time. If his story inspires you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the figures who shaped our world. The man who came back from the Badlands was not the same one who left. That frontier toughness was now his defining trait. And when the Spanish-American War erupted, he proved it by resigning his cushy job as Assistant Secretary of the Navy to form his own volunteer cavalry, the legendary Rough Riders. Now Colonel Roosevelt, he led a scrappy crew of cowboys, college athletes, and adventurers. He led from the front, always. He shared every hardship with his men, earning their absolute loyalty. And during the climactic Battle of San Juan Hill, he did the unthinkable, charging up the heavily defended heights on horseback, a living, breathing embodiment of the strenuous life. That single act of bravery made him a national hero overnight. That momentum carried him to the governorship of New York, then to the vice presidency. And in 1901, after President William McKinley was assassinated, Theodore Roosevelt, at just 42 years old, became the youngest president in American history. He brought that same restless, relentless energy to the White House. He saw the presidency as a bully pulpit, a platform to fight for the average person. His body, once his greatest weakness, was now a symbol of his presidency. He even had a boxing ring installed in the White House, and a sparring session with a professional fighter once permanently damaged his vision, costing him most of the sight in his left eye. He'd famously lead foreign diplomats on exhausting hikes, testing their physical fitness as much as their diplomatic skills. This physical power was a mirror of his political style. He took on challenges everyone else thought were impossible. He became the trust buster, waging war on the giant corporate monopolies squeezing the American economy. He championed conservation, setting aside millions of acres of public land to protect America's natural treasures. And he drove the construction of the Panama Canal, an engineering marvel that had broken all who tried before. As he famously put it, "I took the canal zone and let Congress debate, and while the debate goes on, the canal does also." His whole philosophy could be boiled down to one word: action. Don't back down from a challenge and never ever shy away from a fight for what's right. So when you think of Theodore Roosevelt, don't just picture the hero on horseback or the face on the mountain. Remember the small, frightened boy gasping for air, the kid who was told he was too weak, too sick, to ever amount to anything. But he made a choice. He chose to fight. He chose to build himself, piece by painful piece, into the man he knew he could be. His life is a masterclass in the power of will. It teaches us that our starting point doesn't determine our destination. Roosevelt himself said it best when he summarized his own incredible journey. "It is only through labor and painful effort, by grim energy and resolute courage, that we move on to better things." What part of Roosevelt's story resonates with you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of transformation that shaped our world.